hello everyone, and a huge and very warm welcome to our attendees, but also to our amazing panelists. I'm Hattie Ghaui. I am the CEO of Project Giving Back, and I am this morning's host. And I'm really excited to be joined by some fantastic speakers. So on the webinar with me today, got Ben Eden-Davies, who is Head of Individual Giving at St Mungo's. We've got Joe Roberts, who is the CEO of Wilderness Foundation UK. We've got Faris Khalifa, who is a media volunteer with Mind and who has been on a journey with Mind for many years and has also been really closely involved with the Mind Garden that was designed by Andy Sturgeon earlier this year. And then finally, we are also joined by Janet Cooper, who is acting chair of trustees at the RNLI. So a really lovely, wide range of perspectives from all of those different charity roles. And the purpose of today's session and discussion is really just to unpack how charities can get the most out of the Chelsea Flower Show. So for those of you who are a little bit new to Project Giving Back, Project Giving Back is a charity in its own right. We're a grant-making organisation. We were set up just under 2 years ago by two anonymous founders who saw that the pandemic and the effect of COVID was really going to have really the hardest impact on charities and the communities that charities work with. They are also RHS Life members, and they saw the Chelsea Flower Show as this incredible platform that if charities could gain access to it, it would be a really amazing place for charities to share their message, to engage with existing and new supporters. So we sort of set up to create that connection, and we set up with a commitment to fund 42 gardens over 3 years. And I'm joined by 4 individuals who represented charities that we worked with in our first year in 2022. We funded 12 gardens for good causes at the 2022 RHS Chelsea Flower Show. And most of the attendees on this webinar are from our 2023 cohort. So in 2023, we're going to be funding 15 gardens for good causes. And as you can probably tell from some of the questions that have been submitted, everyone wants to get the most out of it. So that is what we hope you will get from today's session. If you have any questions that don't get answered, or you want to follow us up with us separately, you can just get in touch with us over email. So Ben, Joe, Faris and Janet, just a massive thank you from me for joining me this morning on a Friday. I hope you've got coffees and teas nearby. I'm going to come to you now to just let yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself and your role. And I'm going to come to you first, Ben. I'm going to pick on you first.
That's fine. Hi. Yes, my name's Ben. I'm the head of individual giving at St Mungo's. So sort of my role in the St Mungo's putting down Roots Garden, I was sort of involved from the outset, really, sort of leading the project from the St Mungo's side. We initially sort of scoped out ideas for having some event exposure for growing brand awareness and that sort of thing. So it was very much sort of my me kickstarting things on our side. And then we sort of fortuitously came into contact with Project Giving Back and Cityscapes, who we've worked with for a number of years. So sort of between Project Giving Back, myself and a sort of few other core members of the St Mungo's team and the Cityscapes team, were sort of the 3 groups, I suppose, brought our garden to life. And we're incredibly proud of it. So thank you very much for having the team.
Oh, it's amazing to have you today, and I'm looking forward to kind of getting into the things that you got up to on it. Joe, I'm going to come to you next.
Right. Well, hi. Thank you, everybody. Nice. This is some great opportunity to get involved in. And I'm chief exec at the Wilderness Foundation. So we're a charity that's around people and nature. So nature helping people and then teaching people how to care for nature. So doing a lot of mental health work and a lot of environmental education. And, really in some ways, Chelsea was one of those little bluebirds of happiness that fly through the window. I looked at doing Chelsea many years ago and realized we could never dream of affording it. And so the little dreams sort of flew off. And then suddenly we had a phone call from our wonderful designer, Charlie, who said, would you be interested in collaborating on Project Giving Back? And so it was one of those things that you're not expecting, but we just grabbed it by both hands and really, really made every single ounce of it work as much as we could, because it was such an extraordinary opportunity. So I kind of led on the main senior leadership side of the program, but where we benefited as a small charity, is we actually took on somebody who already knew us really well, but she could focus completely on it rather than us trying to sort of juggle too many things, because you do need a bit of a team to make this happen. It does not happen just, on a wing and a prayer. Yeah. So I kind of led the whole kind of major coordination of it, but I had an extraordinary team of people working all hours to make it happen, and it was worth every second.
Oh, well, it's great to have you, and I love that analogy that you've given about the bird and the opportunity. I'm going to save that. Faris, I'm going to come to you next.
Good morning. My name is Faris, and I'm a media volunteer for Mind. I've been with them for quite a number of years. I handle stuff like TV interviews, radio interviews, etc. And when it came to the Chelsea Flower Show, I was first recruited over as a media speaker. I was doing radio shows and so. But this was my first ever involvement with the project, and it's been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's been amazing. I was saying it's been really lovely, because I think what Mind did which was amazing, is the volunteers were involved really early on. So Faris and I met on like the film shoots in like Brighton around this time a year ago.
It was really impressive to see something grow from a blueprint to like a massive, beautiful garden. It was just unreal.
Yeah, it's very cool. And finally, Janet, to you to introduce.
Thanks very much. And it's been a wonderful opportunity. I'm Janet Cooper. I'm the acting chair of the RNLI and the trustee of the board. And it was just the best opportunity for us. It's created so much excitement. And as Joe said, we've had a really strong team within the team who got really excited from the beginning, working with volunteers to make the most of every opportunity it created. And it's been a fantastic friend raiser and fundraiser for us. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, brilliant. Well, it's lovely. Thank you for coming on it and being so really picking it up and running with it and making it something that you hope would happen. But then when we saw how each of the charities took that opportunity and just did things with it that we just completely blew our minds. It was really exciting to see. Okay, well, that's everyone introduced. And I should say to any attendees, we've got your submitted questions, but as we go through this, if you have any additional questions, please just pop them in the chat or pop them in the questionnaires and we'll have a look. And if we think we want to answer it, we'll give it a go. I am going to come to you first, Ben, just to tell us a bit about why you wanted to have a Chelsea garden and what you did to get the most out of the opportunity. What were the sort of main things you focused on?
Yeah, so I guess one of our sort of organizational strategic objectives between sort of now and 2024, 2025 is to very much grow our brand awareness, grow sort of public empathy and understanding for our cause. We're one of the largest homeless charities in the UK, covering quite a wide range of areas and services across mostly the south and southeast and Bristol, Bath, etc., as well as London and Brighton, Bournemouth, etc. But I think it would be fair to say, even though we deliver hundreds of services, we're not that well known in comparison to some of the sort of larger, bigger brand organisations like Crisis and Shelter, etc. So we wanted to use Chelsea pretty much as a platform and also look at other events as well. But Chelsea specifically because of the exposure that it gets, both as a show in itself, but also the exposure that it gives to the participants, the exhibitors, that very much the brands and charities that exhibit at Chelsea. And so for us, it was about using that platform to grow our sort of public awareness and brand awareness. And our sort of strategy from the offset was very much about building a team internally to give us that give us the content and the platform, so that as and when the PR opportunities and those brand opportunities came out in the lead up to and during Chelsea, that we had that narrative, that story, that content that we were able to push out to the general public, and that whether broadcasters or media outlets wanted stories or content, that from the outset we were, we had our ducks in a row in that context. And because we already have an amazing sort of horticultural therapy program in Putting Down Roots, which is a gardening therapy program, it was a very seamless tie in terms of our narrative and story to be able to tell that story and bring that to life, and use Chelsea as the sort of springboard to be able to kind of do that. And I think we very much delivered on our objectives in that sense. The amount of media coverage that we got, we never would have been able to afford to pay for that. Both in the lead up to and during the event itself, the BBC coverage, the print coverage, the little sort of behind the scenes stories that the BBC ran on various shows that they had in the lead up to and during the week of Chelsea. Again, we never would have been able to afford to pay for that PR and marketing activity. So, it has really massively helped us in terms of sort of building brand awareness, growing, and also like building relationships with existing partners, whether they're corporate partners, major donors, etc. And we've seen the benefit of that this year as a result, with major donors, sort of making sizable contributions this year, particularly in light of the economic situation we've got going on at the moment. I think the fact that they've stuck with us and cited Chelsea as a reason for a fond memory, should I say, of coming along to Chelsea and experiencing and being part of that. And then I think the other final thing to say is, and the most important thing in terms of impact and stuff like that, is we've always struggled, particularly in the colder months, to get our homeless clients to come out, particularly in light of COVID. A lot of people being locked down, having to stay at home, etc. Our homeless clients who live, not always local to where our sort of garden therapy sites are. Chelsea gave us a massive springboard in terms of client involvement, clients getting involved from the outset. A lot of the plants that were on our garden were grown and watered and nurtured by our clients in the various sites around London. So, they were very much part of the garden process all the way, and it wasn't contrived or, anything like that. It was very much an authentic process. And I think, more clients wanting to come out and be involved in our therapy program is sort of a real sort of shining light, I think, from the garden. And again, something that, potentially might have happened in other ways, but certainly all those things coming together within one event it's been amazing. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, it was really lovely that actually. I remember, speaking to people on the garden when it was being built, but also during that show week. They were your actual clients. They'd been involved for such a long time, and I thought that was a really well kind of managed, from your perspective, a really well managed project. Joe, I'm going to come to you next. I remember when we first met, you described Wilderness Foundation as a sort of a small but mighty team. And as a CEO, how have you made sure that your team and your trustees are excited and as engaged about the garden as early as possible? Sort of what did you do to fire everyone up?
Well, I think that everybody just went, wow. I think there's always that little bit of trepidation. We kind of looked at each other on the very first couple of days of thinking about it and thinking, can we truly handle this? And then we just went, absolutely, we will make this happen, of our dead bodies, because it was just this unbelievable opportunity to get the wild into the middle of London, but also to meet so many varied people who are going to travel through Chelsea and come and listen and feel your story. And I think it was the feeling of the story rather than the telling, because when you're looking at beauty in nature and in plants and in planting styles, you can't help but be moved. So there was that huge opportunity. For us, I think it was really a two-woman band to start with Charlie really as our third prong, but based in London doing the design work. But here in the team of the charity, it was really Claire and myself. And then we brought Anne on as our kind of force of nature behind us to kind of really focus in on it. The whole staff team took a little while to sort of wake up to it, because as a charity, we're small and we're all so busy doing that it was kind of suddenly putting another layer into the charity of something really of this magnitude happening. And how did we get everybody to start to get engaged? And I think for the rest of the team, you know, who are working with kids with disabilities and mental health and, you know, climate change, they were kind of heads down, but were sort of rumbling in the background, seeing this kind of real tension building in the team with us. And then suddenly the whole thing burst into life. So I think the trustees were hugely excited. I think they weren't a little bit sure at first how to help. And I think we didn't know how to ask them to help very well in the beginning. And I think that was kind of the how of where we get everybody on team and what are we asking of them was probably a little bit of a learning curve for us. So I think we've got much better at understanding that. But I think once the plan started and we got the brochures printed and the whole thing started to really, once we had the images and the early drafts of what the garden might look like, oh my goodness, that's when, you know, we were just so excited because suddenly it went from being something up here to something here and you could really get it. And then I think that once we actually got the garden idea put together and we knew what we needed to do during the week, that's when we sort of suddenly had this rush of everybody wanting to take part. And was probably the most special part of it all is the amount of the trustee involvement on the site during the day, the staff from all walks of life, some of our beneficiaries on the stand. You know, I remember saying to somebody, I was talking to some women about the domestic abuse work we do in nature. And suddenly this voice popped up and this beautiful soul who's part of our team went, I'm one of those women. I'm one of those women. And this is what it's meant to me. And, you know, there was just that passion that came from having beneficiaries and staff and trustees all working together. I think there was a real magic in that. It was very precious. And it's changed the charity. I think it's actually put an energy on our trustee board because they were working side by side with staff who they might not have known so well, all with a common purpose and all really telling people about why we love what we do and what difference it makes. And that just drove an energy through the whole team, all the way right down to the beneficiaries.
That's so lovely, yeah. And I do think that sort of shared purpose was something we sensed in a lot of charities. Faris, I think this is a really good time to just ask you a little bit about, you know, what it meant to have a garden designed by Andy Sturgeon for Mind, and then, you know, how you were involved in that process as a volunteer.
Yeah, okay. If I'm all completely honest, at the start of the process, I wasn't as educated on the Chelsea Flower Show as I'd wanted to be. And the more I read up on it, the more I spoke to my family about it, the more I realized the magnitude of the ask I was and how honored I was to be asked to do something so prestigious, because the show has been going on for about 103 years now. And to be part of that and represent Mind was amazing. I started off pretty early in the process. So I started off with taking a trip to visit Andy Sturgeon in his house. And where we saw a blueprint and just like the concept of the garden itself. And I think the coolest part is not just seeing the physical concept be built into a real thing, but also the meaning behind it. Because Andy wanted the feeling of safety and embrace within the garden. And to hear him talk about that and the importance of that aspect of it, how nature kind of provides a cocoon for all of us, and to see it realized was just absolutely stunning. It was such a beautiful place, and you felt it because it was such a lively atmosphere. But the second you approach our garden, there was just a zen feeling around it. No matter who was there, everyone was just a calm thing. And I think it's probably changed me as a person for life, because I didn't think I had the confidence to do this. I didn't think I had the kind of capability, but I pulled through, and I just, for the rest of my life, I have that in my book, and so does the charity.
Yeah, it's amazing. That what you say there about that cocoon, I definitely Like I remember when we were speaking to Andy about it in Brighton, sort of like months and months before, and then like you stand at the back of his garden and there's that photo of you and Alice, the other media volunteer, and it's just that really precious moment of, you were there, you saw the blueprint, and then all the way through to actually
absolutely, because it for me, it felt like it's such a high profile environment with celebrities and cameras everywhere, but to have a certain a space in the middle of the entire show where you could go and just walk through and suddenly feel like you're somewhere else. Like it's just the feeling and the meaning that just transported so well, and I was just so glad to see how everyone was so receptive to it, and how beautiful it looked at the end.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Janet, as a trustee, I think you'll probably have a few things to kind of add to on what everyone has already said. But what were your learnings from having a garden at Chelsea? Sort of what did you see that the RNLI did really well? And was there anything you would have done differently in hindsight?
Right. Thank you for that. As I said, it was a really wonderful opportunity. As both Joe and Faris have said, it's a terrific opportunity of bringing people together from the organisation, the staff, the trustees, volunteers, and we have a range of volunteers from crew that go out on our life-saving work to the fundraisers and water education. A whole range of volunteers got involved in this from the beginning. And as Faris said, a number of our volunteers were involved in talking with Chris for Chris Birchall, the designer for the wonderful garden, to work out what the narrative of the garden was. What really worked well for the RNLI was the wonderful narrative of the garden that Chris Birchall came out with. And just to give you a high level of that, because it's really important on the days when you're at the Chelsea Garden, to get that narrative of your garden out. Chelsea visitors are coming to see the wonderful flowers there and the plants. But for you as a charity, the narrative of your garden is really important. And the narrative that Chris came up with, having spoken to our crew and a number of the other volunteers and people we rescued, was that the garden was filled with ordinary plants that created an extraordinary impact. Just like our volunteers, they're ordinary people, but when they come together, they create an extraordinary impact. And there was a light at the back of the garden, and the people that we'd rescued had said when they see the light from our boat coming to them, they think there is hope, they're going to be saved. And when the crew go back to shore in the dark and the weather, and they see that first light on shore, they know they're going to make it back. And there's a whole narrative around the garden, which we then were able to say to our visitors on the garden. So that was incredibly, really well done by Chris Birchall and the whole team, creating that narrative and creating the garden and sharing it with us. It was a really terrific opportunity to prepare to meet visitors, to meet our supporters and volunteers. So we had a whole campaign leading up to it. There is a lot of work that goes into it. And I would say it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Enjoy the journey. It is hard work, as Joe said. Project Giving Back and the designers team, Chris Birchall's team, did a wonderful job, but there is still, if you want to make the most of it, the work is on you, the trustees, the team and the volunteers to do that. So we learned a lot through that process to come together and contribute how we could to make the most of it. What worked really well, we did a high-level donor event on the Monday evening and a corporate event on the Tuesday morning. And we know specifically we've raised about £500,000. And we've also re-energized some of the corporate sponsorship that had gone a bit flat. So it's been a really good in both fundraising and fundraising for us. Lessons learned, what we would do differently, absolutely number one, it's really terrific to get volunteers on the garden. So we were very lucky to have one of the big gardens where we had 14 passes a day. And we chose to rotate, so we'd have people coming in the morning for the morning shift and the afternoon shift, and each day they changed. Don't do that. You need to know about the plants. You need to learn about the narrative of the garden. And I think our recommendation is to have a core team that do several days. You might have others coming that can be trained by those that have been there for a day or two or three, but have some continuity and some consistency. Number two, they need to know about plants. If you've got those people available, we've got 40,000 volunteers in the RNLI. we have a lot of horticulturists. We did not make that a specification. We should have done. And it's not just like in gardens, it's actually knowing about plants, being able to name them, because there is a list of probably over 100 plants, and people do want to know about the plants. And so you need to be able to familiarize yourself very quickly with the specific name of the plants, not just that it's a peony or a rose. They want to know exactly what it is, because they do know it's a peony or a rose or whatever. And look after them in terms of have them there for the day, but get rosters and breaks so that they can enjoy the day as well. It is a long day, but it's incredibly enjoyable. But plan for breaks and take hay fever tablets. Because even if you don't suffer from hay fever, the London plane at Chelsea Week, I think gets just about everybody. So I recommend that they take them, but take some for them. So those are our key lessons learned on the volunteers. On the trustee side, actually the trustees were not involved. They should have been. Jo, you did a tremendous job to get your trustees involved. I put my hand up because I go to Chelsea every year. I absolutely love Chelsea. I love gardens. And most of our volunteers, we're seen as being sea-facing and saving people from drowning. Actually, most of us have gardens as well. And they just didn't think that the trustees would want to get involved. I absolutely put my hand up from the moment I heard about it. But the trustees got involved a little bit too late, and we didn't invite them to come on to the garden. I was on the garden 5 of the 6 days, and then on the breakup day, and loved every moment of it. And I'm sure other trustees would have done had they known to put their hand up or been invited to get involved, because they can see other potential for the charity beyond what the more operational volunteers can do. So that was my key lessons. Think about who your volunteers are, who's going to volunteer for you on the garden, and do get your trustees involved.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because I think lots of people have asked, and it's that thing of, your trustees will be able to either come and help and it'll re-energize them in the work, but also they might be able to bring a small group of people who aren't familiar with the work of the charity, and giving them that purpose and giving them that call to action, I think is a really great way of giving everyone a role. I'm actually going to open that question up a little bit to Ben and to Jo as well, about what your key learnings were. Like, was there anything you would have done differently, Ben? After it, or Jo, if whoever wants to go first.
Then you start.
Okay. So I would, in terms of things would do differently, I think there's something to be said there. I think Janet made a very good point about volunteers and rotas and stuff. We had that very well oiled, I think, during the week of the show. We had a variety of volunteers who came, some who were garden trainers, so with our horticultural program, so knew all about the plants and covered that off. And then we had volunteers who could specifically talk about their experience, or quite emotively talk about the charity and our work and that sort of thing. But I think I feel a bit sorry for Daryl and the designers and their team, because I think between us we probably didn't cover off enough volunteers for the sort of back end of the show, the breakdown and stuff. We'd all been working together so much on the building the garden and getting it all set up in time, and then obviously making sure there were enough people on the garden to talk to the public. But I think we probably didn't have enough people to help with moving the garden on. And I think we hold our hands up there and say that, because we had clients, and obviously we have to manage our clients quite carefully, because some of them, sort of in terms of sort of mental health and things like that, we can't throw them into the project for too many days at a time, and so we had quite a variety there, and then we balanced it out. But I think probably in hindsight we probably could have done with more people to help Daryl and the team with the breakdown, because there's still a lot of work there to be done. And Daryl and the Cityscapes design team did such an amazing job in designing the garden, producing it, building it, orchestrating everybody who was involved in putting that together. But I think between the two of us, we probably should have coordinated a bit more about what happens on the Sunday or the day after, the Monday, when everyone's gone home and Chelsea, the sort of Chelsea circus moves on, basically. And then I think in terms of other bits and pieces that we probably could have done better or done differently. I would say you can't officially fundraise at the show, like not, sort of in the same way that you might sort of, do sort of face-to-face fundraising or something like that. But I think perhaps we probably could have maximized the fundraising opportunity a bit more. We did raise quite a bit of money, and we certainly raised enough money to sort of justify doing it from a commercial, that in terms of those hard KPIs. But I think we probably could have done a bit more during the week of the show. I know other sort of gardens had auctions and things like that. So I think there's definitely something to learn from that in terms of maximizing that fundraising opportunity where you do have major donors or corporate partners there in the moment, and maximizing the opportunity of their presence, essentially.
Yeah, amazing. And Jo, what about you from Wilderness Foundation?
Well, I think, our biggest learning was around the preparation and the follow through. So I think, you've got to look at coming to Chelsea as one big continuum of how do we plan and get it all ready. And then there are those three kind of elements, there's the garden, then there's your communications, there's the staffing. So just having a really, really comprehensive plan where you sit down and really pull together exactly how you're going to do that all quite early on is important. A real project planning exercise. I think in terms of the preparation, I wish we'd brought more of the trustees and other staff into some kind of a subcommittee earlier on, so that we'd spread the load a little bit more between people early on, because they all got it later on. But early on, we missed that. So we were doing it very much as just the three of us. I think that in terms of exactly what Ben was saying, I think we didn't do very well on the fundraising, because I think we just ended up talking a lot with people and really sharing. But we were trying to sort of find a way to gather names, and we're maybe a bit too shy about that. So we had like a competition to gather names, which was kind of in a GDPR way, how we would then be able to contact people afterwards and stay involved. But personally, I think I was a bit of a scaredy cat, and I found that I ended up talking to people and having a conversation, and then to try and get their name out of them almost felt a little bit weird. So I wasn't the best name collector as CEO. I feel really bad. I should have been like on it, Mrs. Name Collector. But it was more, to us, it was more about the relationships we were building and the conversations. And I think afterwards we would definitely try and seek advice about what would be the best way to engage quite a transient, fast-moving community, to hold them with you a little bit more. So I think that's definitely a big learning for me. And I think also we didn't really maximize enough on the corporate opportunity. We were a little bit slow on that. And again, if our trustees had come in earlier as part of the subcommittee, I think we would have fired them up more to have helped us more with that event. So I think those were big learnings. So, to summarize on that, I would say draw on a wider community, put together a subcommittee early on, so you're spreading your load between a wide range of different skill sets rather than just the doers. And I would definitely have your comms right. So while this is all running, have your own internal communications plan. How do you keep staff excited? How do you keep trustees excited? How do you tell your membership once we've been given the green light? How do you get them excited? How do you get your volunteers? So there's external and internal comms. I think one last thing I would add is, I think, be ready for the level of celebrity media interest actually during the show. So know that you've got people, as much as prepping about knowing the plants, and you're absolutely right, Janet. Boy, there was like early morning kind of exam time, just kind of desperately trying to learn what was that one, what was this one, so that everybody knew what they were talking about. But definitely have the idea about how I'm going to speak to the media, who's going to do it, who's on site, how do they do it, are they prepped, what's our message, are we all clear? So, because it comes very fast and furiously and you don't know it's coming towards you. So you need to be somebody who's a really quick on their feet spokesperson, needs to be around your stand.
Got you. So, I just before I go on to my next question, I just think, Janet, I'd like to come back to you on the fundraising point, because RNLI did do well on that point. What would be your advice on it?
We did specifically well on because we had a high donor event, but during the flower show itself, there are some things you can do. You can put QR codes on each of the posts around the garden. We only took one copy of it, so only one small group of people could see it, but you can actually staple them onto each of the posts. And that QR code, if you set that up right, should go to your homepage, and I'm sure all of your charities will have a donate button, because people do say, oh, how can I donate? So, go to our website. It's that much more difficult to think about it when you've left the show. But if they're in that moment want to donate, if you've got a QR code that takes you to your homepage and the donate button's very obvious, actually it's dead easy to get there because everybody uses their mobile phone. So do think about getting a QR code set up for your homepage. Corporates, absolutely, Joe. We didn't really engage with our corporates. So I was only told about the corporate event 3 days before the Chelsea show, because otherwise I would mobilise a lot more corporates to go there. But I think there is an opportunity which we didn't really think about until the Monday evening. There was a gala on the Monday evening where some big city organisations, the big law firms, the accountancy firms, take their absolute top clients, their chief executives, their the serious decision makers. So I think it would be a good idea if RHS can share with you who's taking those spaces, who's taking clients there. And if you have a relationship with one of them, see if you can engage for that Monday night to invite them onto your garden, to meet your designer, to meet you and hear your narrative about your garden and your charity, because you might be able to connect with some really heavy hitters on that Monday night. So I know there is one, the law firm that I was a partner at is now taking people to that Monday evening. So if somebody wants to be connected to a city law firm, let me know, and I'll see if I can connect you with them and their guests if you would like them to come by and see your garden specifically. But do think about that Monday night. It's not all about people just having a swanky party, which it is. It's a lovely evening, but there are some serious business people there that might be interested in your charity.
Yeah, I think that's really good, because I think sometimes something that a lot of the charities this year that we've spoken about, pressure to say, oh, are we going to the Monday night? Are we taking guests? It's actually not really about that. Like, definitely have a person on the garden, but really it's actually about engaging the guests that are already coming.
That's right.
Yeah. Faris, I just want to come to you, because obviously you're a volunteer, and Mind, they brief you on the kind of the messages of the garden, but also you've been involved in that process. What was the impact on Mind, do you think, but also on you as an individual and other volunteers?
Okay, the impact on Mind was tremendous. You don't realize how far-reaching the Chelsea Flower Show until you see the numbers. And we had over 200 pieces written over radio broadcast and print. And then further on, we had over 7 million people view our posts on social media. And we had an estimated of just under 6 million in revenue. And sorry, in advertising cost. Impact to me as a person has been undescribable, because as someone who was with a disability, when I was first asked and tasked with it, I wasn't sure if I could do it. And I remember for the longest time just telling myself that if I get through this, people believe in me, that I'll forever be changed. And that's exactly what happened. The boost of confidence, the being part of such a beautiful, grand kind of almost experiment was such a lovely thing. And I can see it in myself every single day. So I would always recommend people get involved. It's such a beautiful, beautiful event.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I remember we were chatting about that moment. It's the surreal moment when you're kind of walking down somewhere and suddenly like you bump into a celebrity. Like, Chelsea is quite a surreal environment. Which was the celebrity that like complimented you on your shoes, Faris?
Oh, it was bananas. I was sitting down and an older gentleman approached me. He was very debonair looking. He looked so cool. And he said to me, "Young man, if they had an award for best shoes in show, you would win." I said, "Oh, I thank you." And as he walked away, one of the staff walked up and said to me, "That's Jeremy Irons." And I was like, I just speak to Scar from The Lion King. And I was speechless for like a week. He's one of my absolute heroes. It's crazy because you think about the when you hear celebrities, you think of like a very snooty environment, but it's not. It's such a welcoming, happy environment. Everyone's just there because we all love nature, regardless of status. And it was just, you could feel it. There was no hostiness about the whole thing. It was just really welcoming and just warm.
Oh, amazing. No, like I would be dumbstruck if Jeremy said anything to me. So probably good you didn't realise in the moment.
Oh my God, I know.
Amazing. I'm just going to touch a little bit on where the gardens have moved to, and then we'll come back to sort of the Chelsea Week and some of the specific questions that people have asked. But, you know, you're right to point out, Ben, that, you know, the show itself is not the only part. It is about the relocation, and thinking about, you know, where that garden goes on to and how that continues to be a part of your charity story is really key. So Ben, yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about what that story's been, what that legacy's been, and how St Mungo's will continue to use the garden.
Yeah, so I guess to roll back slightly, the Cityscapes, Daryl and Adolfo, who we've been working with them for over 10 years as a charity. They design a lot of pocket parks around London, lots of community gardens in awkward spaces, you know, areas that you would think, how could you create a garden space there within a sort of, you know, very sort of gritty urban area, particularly around London Bridge and Southwark and areas like that. And what we do is we maintain the gardens. So when they've produced those gardens, you know, whether they're outside university buildings or in small, you know, community areas, our putting down roots team and the clients will go there on a weekly basis and maintain those gardens. So our garden, our concept at Chelsea was very much that. It was a pocket park, a community garden. It was designed not just for Chelsea. In fact, not for Chelsea, really. Like a lot of the elements of our garden are very much kind of as you would see them now in London Bridge, where our gardens are now housed. And it was specifically designed for the relocation rather than just for Chelsea. And so our clients, they will continue to maintain those gardens and the gardens in and around London Bridge as we do on a weekly basis. But also those gardens are now, I think one's outside Southwark Crown Court. And so it's a great opportunity essentially for our clients to continue and the legacy to carry on, but also for the public to experience those gardens for free in the heart of London, essentially. So it's been a nice sort of narrative all the way through from start to finish.
Yeah, amazing. And Joe, you mentioned you've got two gardens out of the One Chelsea experience. What's that been like?
We're slightly overambitious, I think, Hattie, in some ways, but we don't like to waste. That's the problem. So we always wanted the garden to go into a school, and particularly one that was going to be more of an inner city school with more concrete around, so we could bring the sense of awe and wonder about nature into a much more urban environment. So we did a little competition with a variety of schools to see who wanted to pitch for it. And it felt really mean having to turn people away. But we've got a school called Henry Maynard in Walthamstow, which is actually, you know, a school which is extraordinarily deserving. And the garden's a little bit slow at the moment. It's in, but it's just getting all the final tweaks and things. So we should, by the spring, be able to do a big splash, particularly when it's starting to really get its little shape and it's looking perfect. It's in, but not quite where we want it at the moment. And then we've also taken the framework. So if you imagine all the planting and these incredible rocks from Devon that were just, honestly, I kept sort of looking at little nettles growing out of it and wanting to protect them the whole time because they were kind of growing naturally out of this rock the whole way through Chelsea. So they've all gone down to Henry Maynard. And then here at our base in Essex, which gets 7,000 children and adults with needs and mental health and a whole range of things and environmental education, we've taken the framework and we now have rebuilt that with a team of volunteers. And now we're going to populate that. We're going to turn that into a medicinal garden because we actually think that our beneficiaries and the therapists on site can then actually use that medicinal type of work to do even more work on the site with their clients. So we've dual purposed to do that. And I think the day that the structure arrived on the back of a truck, we weren't expecting it. And it was just like, oh my goodness, okay. So you don't realize how big a Chelsea structure is and the wooden structure. Yeah. So we've coped with a lot of some extremely exciting challenges, but we're going to try and make the most of absolutely everything. So it's just beautiful watching it all coming into life at Henry Maynard. And we know that they've got high levels of deprivation, and it's going to be children who don't get access to nature who'll be able to trip and run through the garden, and not trip in that way, I mean trip trap with little feet, and have a really wonderful time in something so beautiful. So, and at the same time, we're running our climate change action schools program at Henry Maynard. So today the team are all there working with the children at Henry Maynard around climate change. But we've got the garden sort of mirroring all of the active work in the school at the same time. So it's really exciting.
Yeah. And Janet, just on the RNLI garden, I mean, the thing that I've noticed about the RNLI is that you're already doing events, you know, post Chelsea, like you've got one in December. So the legacy continues and the story continues, doesn't it?
Yes, and that's it. It really is about legacy. So yes, we're bringing the whole Chris Bearshaw team and Project Giving team back together, bringing the gang back together to say thank you and celebrate the wonderful gold-winning garden that was done for the RNLI. But it's also the opportunity. You very kindly invited all the charities to come together. Again, just to mark, the Chelsea year that we've had, and the relationships continue to build. So I've got a relationship with Mind, which the RNLI did not have before, but clearly there are things that we can do together. So it does keep on building in a way that perhaps may not have been anticipated to start with. It's about the individual charities, but now it's bringing the charities together and sharing and collaborating in a different way. So again, thank you for that.
Amazing. I'm going to come to, just because we've only got almost 10-15 minutes left, and I've seen some great questions. I mean, thank you to panelists. You've already been answering some of the questions that have been popping up, but one question I can see there is from Charlotte, and I'm going to come to you, Ben. I'm going to put you on the spot, I'm afraid. But it's that question around like how did each of the charities benefit from RHS directing media to you versus you attracting it yourself? And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the media form that you prep, the kind of relationship that you have with the RHS, but then that you do have to be proactive, which I think your teams were.
Yeah, so I've always said throughout this process that I think the Chelsea opportunity can be as big or as small as you want it to be, depending on what your ambitions are as an organisation and what your objectives are. Obviously, one of our key objectives was to raise brand awareness, to raise knowledge of who we are, what we do, and obviously build that empathy and understanding with the general public. So from the outset, we sort of tackled that. We wanted to tackle that head on. The media form was a labour of love. I'm not going to lie. We went round the houses internally about 5 times, picking on the nuances of different wording in our messaging and all of that stuff. But it was really, really helpful to work with the media team at RHS at the time to sort of get that right and make sure that we had the narrative right, and that that would obviously be appealing and compelling for media outlets and for journalists, etc. I think we were quite lucky in the sense that we were a little, I'd say, in hindsight, I'd say we were a little bit late in the lead up, probably, in terms of maximising the PR opportunities. But as soon as our PR team did kick in and sort of engage, sort of full throttle with it, we did manage to then really pick up a few sort of really exciting opportunities. We were quite lucky that our sort of head of press and PR had worked in various industries, so was able to sort of connect with a few contacts at the BBC. I would say that if you've got people within the organisation who have contacts or can connect you with different people, I would bite their hand off and take that opportunity, because it only comes around once. You only have this opportunity once, and it's in a very finite window. Really, we're obviously in the throes of planning and developing our Chelsea project and Chelsea Garden for months, but in reality, sort of that sort of media interest happens in the sort of couple of weeks leading up to, during, and then potentially a few days afterwards. Obviously, you have the gardening press who have longer lead times depending on their channel, but on the whole, you kind of need to maximise that and throw as much at it as as intensely as possible. And so we had a really nice feature on Morning Live where they came down and filmed our clients and volunteers on the garden, putting the garden together and talking about the homeless cause and how our gardening therapy obviously supports clients and things like that. We had various radio interviews and BBC features during the week of Chelsea. Obviously, our garden, you couldn't really miss it. It was neon, so it was very Instagrammable. So we again maximised those opportunities with celebrities, particularly on press day. We got a lot of celebrity interest because obviously it would look great on their own Instagram profiles. What I would say is, if you're getting celebrities to come to your garden and take photos, get them to take the photos on their phone, not you take photos and then post to your own social media, because then there's a better chance that they will share with the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of followers. And we did have a few sort of high profile celebrities who wanted to be photographed on the garden and inevitably shared it on their social media platform. So, it's kind of various different things that we kind of really jumped on from that angle. And I think we definitely made the most of that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that tip about sharing, getting a celeb to take it on their phone instead of your own is a really good one. I think the other thing, just to kind of add in there from PGB perspective, but the RHS media team are absolutely amazing. Like, get on a call with them, get them excited about your garden and the narrative, like actually talk to them about it rather than just send them the media form and kind of let them pick from it. Like, really get them impassioned about it, because then when they're having conversations, it's really fresh in their mind about what you want to get across. And then the kind of our PR consultants, Bloom PR, always say that don't bombard your media contacts with like long briefing material. Even if it's just a one-liner email, send them that, get them interested. And in a weird sort of way, like, the more work you do for them, the easier you make it for them, the more likely they're to pick up that story. So I think, RNLI, Mind, I think all of the organizations on this call, you had the images ready to go, you had those case studies, you were supplying that all the time. So it just really makes it easy for journalists and media to pick up on that.
Can I just say one last point, is that Jenny and the Bloom PR team were absolutely amazing and held our hand all the way through. I think particularly for us, because, it's such a high profile event, and a lot of people, whilst, with the best of intentions, haven't necessarily worked on this sort of stuff before, or at least not at this scale. So for us as an organisation, Jenny and the team were brilliant. They were always on hand to answer questions and to give us advice on throughout the process. So tap them up big time.
Can I just add, I echo everything that you said, Ben, and actually there was a bit of a kind of a lovely triad of PGB and Hattie's team, and then Bloom getting involved, and then us. So, I think the support you will get from PGB team is absolutely fantastic. And then with the RHS, read the manual really, really carefully. I'm just going to say that as a little tip, because I'm kind of all about creation and not going into the tiny small print. Do take the time to read it all through so you feel really competent about knowing all the kind of regulations, what you can do, what you can't do. Just make sure that it's a bit like homework that you really do thoroughly. And then if you can try and see, if you're a small charity, and I think that's where we were sometimes a little bit different to some of the others, we're really tiny, so we don't have our own PR teams and things. Go early into seeing if you can get a pro bono PR company on your team as well. And then Jenny and the others at Bloom will just be so supportive. But try and think about where else you can harness some support early on so that you don't leave that till the last minute. It's really worth that.
Yeah, no, amazing. And I do remember this also, I want to come to Janet because it talks a little bit about someone earlier, when they were submitting questions, had a question about how do you create special moments, that either get picked up on by the media or your supporters kind of engage with. What did the RNLI do around that?
Well, no surprise, we invited fishermen's friends to come and sing sea shanties. And of course, that's a big media moment, and the BBC and all the film crew were there. And obviously you tell them in advance that that's what you're doing, because they want to find these special moments. So there's something relevant for your charity that you could invite somebody on, usually on Monday, which is the main media day, when they've got space to get around the gardens. Yes, do that, because then you'll get really high profile media on the main news channels, not just written up in the papers. And talking about celebrity, on the Monday, it is the private event there. I think you are invited to identify celebrities that are associated with your charity, or supporters of your charity. So just make sure that they're invited and that they know to come to your garden so that you can take those photographs. And even if you don't, we have somebody who manages our celebrities. And so he was stood outside our garden looking for them and making sure they didn't miss our garden, and just stewarded them on, and so that we could take photographs of them on our garden.
Oh, amazing. No, it's a good, you have to be really on it with catching people as they go past. And I think one thing that I notice, Faris, you might be able to add to this, but really briefing people if they're involved in your garden. Like I think what mine do with volunteers, and you can testify to this, but they really prepare the volunteers of like, this is, these are the key messages, this is what we want you to do.
Yeah, I think it's great to brief, because it's such a high energy environment, and things are happening so quickly, and just having a bit of foresight. Because one thing they'll ask a lot is, most people will ask for a list of plants. Like, that's their favorite thing to ask for. And just like Joe said before as well, having a place to just attract celebrities' Instagrammable pictures is such a big deal, because some of the coolest pictures I've seen were from the Neon Garden and from stuff like that. It's just very memorable, because once you're there, you see it. It's such a, just like you said, I would definitely maximize that angle of it.
Yeah. Amazing. We are running out of time. It's been an amazing, almost an hour on with you all, and I'm so grateful. Janet, Ben, Joe, and Faris. It's been a really lovely conversation. I feel very nostalgic and want to go back to Chelsea now. But I just want to say a huge thank you to you all for joining. I think there's been some really fantastic advice that you've shared, some from sort of experiences, and I really appreciate your sort of candid honesty of sort of saying, these are the things we would have done differently, and we wish we'd, got onto that a bit earlier. Janet, I have a feeling you're going to be bombarded for contacts about that legal law firm, so best of luck. But as I said, for anyone who's attending, if you have any questions that haven't been answered, what we're going to do is we'll probably send out a little summary email with sort of, an answer to all of the questions that were submitted that haven't been answered today. But please do feel free to reach out to us, and we can set up a call and chat through any further questions that you have. But yeah, a huge thanks from me, and I know the attendees will be really grateful to all of you for your time.
Thank you. Lovely to see everyone.
Thank you. All right. Bye now.
Well, bye.